The loophole that lets your Italian suit be made in China. How does a $9,000 Loro Piana jacket earn a Made in Italy label when it was sewn by undocumented workers earning €4 an hour? That is the question a Milan court answered in the summer of 2025. The answer is inside the label. There is a Loro Piana jacket on a rack inside the Galleria Vittorio Emanuele II, the 19th century shopping arcade at the heart of Milan. The label on the lining reads, Made in Italy. The retail price is around $9,000. By the end of the week, someone will buy it. The label is true. It is also, in ways that are now a matter of court record, almost beside the point. To understand what is happening, it helps to walk the jacket backward. The fiber inside the cloth comes from vicuna, a wild relative of the alpaca that lives at high altitude in the Peruvian Andes. The animals are protected, they cannot be killed for their wool, and they are sheared once every 2 years by indigenous shearers from the community of Lucanas. According to a March 2024 Bloomberg Businessweek investigation, those shearers are paid roughly $280 per kilogram of raw fiber. In 2012, they were paid $450 per kilogram. Some shearers, according to the reporting, worked through the annual harvest without being paid at all. None of them had ever seen a finished garment made from the fiber they had cut. For context, once that same raw fiber is processed and sold at the commodity level, it trades at somewhere between $400 and $600 per kilogram. The retail price of one finished garment, depending on style, runs between $5,000 and $12,000. A few months after Bloomberg published, Loro Piana, owned since 2013 by LVMH, the French luxury conglomerate, released a centenary book through the luxury imprint Assouline. It was titled Master of Fibers. It celebrated the brand's commitment to rare materials and traditional craftsmanship. It did not mention Lucanas. The fiber, having left the Andes, travels to a town in northern Italy called Biella. Biella is in Piedmont, in the foothills of the Alps. It has been finishing wool for around 1,000 years. The water in Biella, drawn down from the mountains by a network of streams, is unusually soft, low in mineral content, and chemically mild, and that softness is part of why the region became the world capital of fine wool finishing. The Loro Piana mill is in Biella. So is Vitale Barberis Canonico. So are Retta, Cerruti, Drago, Zegna, and Guabello. All of these mills are real. The cloth they produce is, by any reasonable definition of the word, Italian. The cloth, in this case, was no exception. Where things get more complicated is what happens next. A piece of cloth is not yet a garment. To become a jacket, it has to be cut, sewn, lined, and finished, a process that requires a workshop with sewing machines and people to run them. Loro Piana sent that work to a supplier called Evergreen Fashion Group. Evergreen Fashion Group, a named intermediary with its own supplier relationships, subcontracted to 2 additional intermediary firms that had no manufacturing capacity of their own. Those firms passed the order to an unregistered workshop in Lombardy, run by Chinese owners. That workshop is where the jacket was actually built. In the early summer of 2025, Italian Carabinieri labor inspectors entered the workshop. They had not come looking for Loro Piana. They had come because one of the workers had been physically assaulted by his employer over unpaid wages and a criminal complaint had been filed. The police followed the complaint to the address. What they found, according to court documents later filed in Milan, was the following: 10 Chinese workers, 5 of them undocumented. Working hours that, in some cases, ran to 90 hours per week. An hourly wage of approximately €4, less than half the Italian legal minimum. Sleeping accommodations on the premises, in rooms that had been converted into makeshift dormitories without fire exits. In July of 2025, a Milan court placed Loro Piana under judicial administration for 1 year. The court described the brand as having culpably failed to oversee its supply chain. No criminal charges were filed. An outside administrator was assigned to monitor operations until the brand could demonstrate adequate compliance. The administration was lifted roughly 9 months later after Loro Piana introduced new auditing controls, including, according to court filings, approximately 2,400 supplier audits. The jacket assembled in that workshop by those workers at those wages qualifies under Italian and European law as made in Italy. This is where the actual mechanic becomes important. The phrase made in Italy, as used on a clothing label, has a specific legal definition. Under Article 16 of Italian Law Number 166 of 2009, a product must be entirely planned, manufactured, and packed within the borders of Italy. That is the definition. The law does not specify who must perform the manufacturing, what those workers must be paid, or under what conditions they must work. Italian soil is the only requirement. That framework also intersects with the EU Customs Code country of origin rules, which similarly focus on where substantial transformation of a product occurs, not on the labor conditions under which that transformation takes place. An undocumented worker laboring at €4 an hour in an unregistered workshop in Lombardy is, for the purposes of the label, exactly equivalent to a third-generation tailor in a unionized atelier in Milan. The cloth has been transformed inside the borders. The label applies. This loophole has a particular history. In the early 1990s, immigrants from the Wenzhou region of southeastern China began arriving in the Tuscan city of Prato in unusually large numbers. They often came on tourist visas and stayed. By the early 2000s, Prato, a city of fewer than 200,000, had become home to one of the largest Chinese populations in Europe, in the range of 50,000 residents. The newcomers, many with prior experience in textile work, set up garment workshops in industrial spaces around the city. Those workshops took on contract work for established Italian brands. The arrangement was efficient. The work was fast and cheap. The label remained clean. The Italian state news program Report covered the situation in 2007 in an episode titled Luxury Slaves. The Los Angeles Times published its own investigation the same year, naming Dolce and Gabbana, Gucci, and Prada among the brands then sourcing from Wenzhou-run workshops. Wages of around $5 per hour were documented against an Italian legal minimum that was then roughly twice that. The reporting drew attention for several weeks. Then it stopped drawing attention. 18 years later, in a different room, the same testimony is being filed again, this time in court. In January of 2024, a Milan court placed the leather goods brand Alviero Martini under judicial administration for failing to oversee its supply chain. Dior, the Italian subsidiary of the French house, was placed under the same procedure later that year. Giorgio Armani operations followed in April. A Valentino bag-making subsidiary followed in May of 2025. Then Loro Piana. And more recently, Tod's Group, the Italian leather goods brand behind Tod's, Hogan, and Roger Vivier, became one of the latest names to be formally named in the probe, representing the investigation's most recent escalation as of early 2026. In each case, the underlying structure was the same. A brand contracted production through an intermediary. The intermediary subcontracted to workshops the brand itself had never inspected. The workshops employed migrant labor, frequently Chinese, frequently undocumented, in conditions that did not comply with Italian labor law. In each case, the court found that the brand had failed to exercise due diligence over its own supply chain. In each case, the judicial administration was lifted within 9 to 12 months, once compliance reforms were introduced. None of the brands were criminally charged. All of them are still operating. All of their products continue to ship with Made in Italy on the label. In December of 2025, a Milan prosecutor named Paolo Storari, who has led the supply chain labor exploitation investigations since the Alviero Martini case in 2024, issued formal information requests to 13 additional brands as part of an expanding investigation. The list, as reported in the Italian press, included Gucci, Prada, Versace, Yves Saint Laurent Manufacture, Alexander McQueen Italia, Givenchy Italia, and an Italian subsidiary of Adidas. The brands were not, as of the date of the request, under formal investigation. Storari's letter described, among other findings, Chinese workers being employed in conditions of severe exploitation across multiple supplier sites. The structure producing these outcomes is not unusual. A luxury brand operates under cost pressure from its parent group and its shareholders. It contracts production at prices that allow the parent group to clear the margin it expects. The supplier, faced with those prices, cannot meet them using Italian labor at Italian wages. The work descends through paper-only intermediaries until it reaches a workshop willing to do it for what the supplier can pay. The shopper at the Galleria sees a label that reads, "Made in Italy." The shopper is told that the price reflects the quality of the work. Both of these things are, in their way, true. The legal phrase and the marketing phrase point at different things while using the same words. A jacket planned in Milan and assembled in Lombardy qualifies for the label regardless of the conditions under which it was assembled. Article 16 of Law No. 166 of 2009 was originally written to keep foreign factories outside the European Union from claiming Italian origin. Whether it has succeeded at that, and what else it has quietly come to permit, are no longer the same question. The Italian government has been aware of this for some time. So has the European Union. Reform proposals, including more granular labeling, mandatory supplier audits, and expanded penalties, have been discussed periodically. None of them have moved particularly far. The Italian luxury sector accounts for a substantial portion of the country's economic identity, and the political appetite for serious enforcement has been limited. The judicial administration cases, to the extent they accomplish anything beyond reputational damage, enforce the supplier audits the law already required. They do not change what the label is allowed to say. The jacket is still on the rack at the Galleria. The boutique opens at 10 and closes at 8. Someone will buy it.